Can you do the dance?
The Rusty Shake?
The Rusty Shake?
You want me to do
Yeah,
wait a second, let me limber up a little bit. Oh, let me do the leg. I'm a little stiff from laying on the floor working on the robot.
You know what?
But you know what?
You did it. You got the job done. All right, everyone. We're here in BattleBots Season 6 with the one, the only, Dave Eaton.
I don't know. I think there's a lot of Dave Eatons around the globe.
There's definitely not.
Are there? I don't know. Dave's a pretty common name.
Name
I think
one other Dave Eaton.
I actually have like 4 or 5 friends on Facebook, but they're all in England. There's like 5 Daves in Malice, okay? There's like a Dave army here.
It's Season 6. Rusty came in, took the entire BattleBots community by storm, as I'm sure you know very well.
Surprise, maybe. They're like, oh, it works. Whoa.
Oh my God, it's beautiful.
Oh my God. I never thought scrap could look so good.
Oh my God. Everyone fell in love with Rusty in his rookie season. It is now your second season. What is new to Rusty this year?
So he's still Rusty. He still has bull, but he's all new otherwise. I decided after last season, I was like, well, Rusty Senior, he's beautiful, he's adorable, he's great, but I am going to totally start over and start from scratch again. New frame and everything, all new materials, so I was like, let's go gas powered and make it hard.
Yes. So internal combustion engine is notably super loud from what I've heard.
Yes.
And awesome. So awesome.
Yeah. Gas adds its whole new level of complexity. It's all more mechanical, more customization in the parts. You know, you're not just buying things off the shelf. Things typically cost more.
Sure.
And then again, once I decided to go gas, I wasn't going to go half gas, half electric. Yeah. Once I decided on an energy format, I was like, I'm deciding on a gas engine. It produces mechanical power. I'm going to stay all mechanical power. Oh, yeah.
So what are we working with this season?
So we're working with the entire chassis is all AR500.
All right.
I had realized that I like rounded structures, I like rounded shapes.
Sure.
Rounded shapes, they're naturally strong.
Right.
And they naturally have a lot of benefits as a result.
Yeah.
The front end of Rusty, his front tube, it being rounded, it might be mild steel, but that rounded tube has held up to lots of big hits.
Of course.
It's as straight as it was the day it started. So when I thought about that, I was like, you know what? I would love the tube. We're going to keep the tube. It's a great battering ram.
Yeah.
But I wanted to go AR, and they don't make tubes in AR typically, and they don't make them in this size. Sure. So I got a sponsor out of Milwaukee, Finco, and I was like, hey guys, they're like, hey, how's it going? They're like, who are you? And I'm like, I'm the guy on the team with BattleBots. They're like, what's that? And then they're like, oh, BattleBots, oh my God. So then I got them on board, and they did a beautiful job. They formed a, like I said, a 1/4-inch piece of AR.
Sure.
They rounded out a piece of laser cut plate for me. I did it in SolidWorks, flattened that baby out, and they just made a perfect, nice round tube for me. They made me these nice curved round fenders for it, which I think add to the style. And again, the nature of them being round makes them a lot structurally stronger.
Right.
And I was like, let's go all the way to the moon. Let's get fancy. I was like, let's get titanium, you know, let's get gears, let's get all this stuff. And
let's get heavy.
It got heavy fast, yeah. Especially when I would spec a part and I couldn't get that part, and I was like, well, we only got a week. We got to find something else, you know what I'm saying?
Rusty last season had the treads. Do you have a soft spot for the treads? Like,
everybody's like, tracks. Why are you still doing tracks? I love tracks.
They're so cool.
They are cool, and I am going to probably forever stay with tracks.
Nice.
I'm sorry, but I just have a thing for tracks. I think they add an aspect of the robot. And I don't know that they've been explored enough, to be honest. You know, tracks are another thing. It's easier to make a wheel than it is to make a track. Sure. Right? So tracks, again, you get into more customization and stuff like that. And I know in the past, like, I ran Rexnord 1894, 1864. I forgot the number on them, but they're tabletop chain with a number 60 base chain. And they work great on old Rusty. They give him that clunky aesthetic, you know, when he trundles across the floor and stuff. But they're very heavy.
Yeah.
Right? And at the end of the day, when you have some of these big hitter robots, which is getting to be more and more robots in the field, that even the 60 chain, it's not going to hold up to a hit from a lot of these big spinners. Right. So this year I came around and decided actually to run CVT belts. So I found the biggest CVT belt I could get my hand on.
It's huge. Yeah,
it is a big honking belt. And actually they're quite strong in their own right. But that CVT belt weighs like a pound. So I probably have 2 pounds in the belts on him. The old tracks together, once they were fully built and rubbered, were like 22 pounds.
Okay, that's an awesome improvement.
Yes.
and a serious dramatic reduction in weight, especially if you're going to make this thing as strong as you say you have.
Yeah, all the chassis is AR 500, and then a lot of the panels and everything like that, like his side panels, one sitting back here, are titanium.
That's so sweet.
Pretty much all the bolt-on stuff, except for his back cover, is titanium or aluminum.
That's so awesome. And I mean, you get this titanium, and you spend this time machining it and making it like new Rusty, but also similar to the old. I mean, you have to add the crowning feature, the bowl.
Bowl, everybody's like, oh, is the bowl gonna come back? It's the bowl. I was like, are you kidding me? Is the bowl gonna come back? I mean, like, come on, look at that baby. This thing's like round and shiny. And I was like, and every day I'm out, like every day now, ever since I built the first robot, I'm always, when I'm out walking around, going to the store or whatever, you know, I'm always like, oh man, that's a good looking bowl. You know,
that's a nice bowl.
You know, I'm out there like tape measuring bowls at the grocery store, and people are like, but like, it's funny because the bowl is something where I can't get a custom bowl, at least not yet, right? And so I spend a lot of time going online, searching around, finding specs on bowls. Nobody looks up specs on bowls that I know of. Like, you know, they're like, oh, what's the size? Maybe chefs do, I don't know, but I'm like, what's the dimensions? What's the depth? What's the gauge? But I did find a nice, beautiful 20-quart stainless steel bowl that fits him very nice. I know, it was funny because when I put the robots next to each other, I didn't really sink in how much bigger the tube is on Rusty Mark II. Rusty Jr. until I actually got the bowl and everything, and I put them on, and I was like, dang, you know, like, that's a bowl, right? So, but it's beautiful. I mean, the camera crews, they're always like, oh, they're like polishing it, and
it's so shiny.
You can also like see your reflection in it, you know, you can trim your beard if you have to, you know, there's a lot of things that bowl is capable of doing. So I definitely had to keep the bowl aesthetic. I love it, and again, it fits the rounded out look of the robot.
Yeah,
you know
really
what I mean?
does. My observation from the outside, it seems like it would be really good at like glancing off hits. Like when if you see like, let's say like a hammer like shatter or something coming through, kind of like yours, it would just kind of shake off of there.
Yep.
And I can't imagine that the bowl is strong enough to like stop one of those, but also like you're right, it does round it out very nicely.
It does round it out very nicely, and I think going into this next iteration, I have looked at buying a bowl and then trying to rivet or modify the bowl to make the bowl a little more armored. But the other thing that always astonishes me with the bowl, and I say this to a lot of people, I said, I know it's thin, but just the nature of it being formed and rounded, they hold up to a lot. Even the old Rusty Mark I, his bowl has really held up to a lot of big hits and being dropped on it. So, I mean, granted, I would say that shatter would probably puncture a hole in it, but it would do the job of slowing the hammer enough to probably protect the internals.
Which is pretty awesome in its own right. So, think about this. 2 bowls.
Double bowls.
Double bowls. 2 double bowl thickness.
And then JV weld between them.
You talk about protecting your insides. Just double it.
That's true. That double gauge. It's funny you mention that because a lot of people have been like, well, what if you took the bowl and just like lined it with like some type of like epoxy or even a urethane or something? I was like, meh. But double bowls, I haven't heard that one. I like it.
It's not bad.
Right? Bowlception. Bowl and bowl.
Kind of wanted to pivot a little bit into your fights this season.
Right.
How many fights have you had?
So far, I've had fights with Rusty Senior.
Okay, Rusty Senior.
Which is the OG Rusty Mark I.
Okay,
yeah.
So I didn't know that you were still running Rusty Senior.
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect.
Yeah, we were running into like a tough marathon. Like I said, we were running into a big marathon having all kinds of parts and supplies issues.
Yeah.
And we had a few critical parts that weren't finished, and so we were struggling to like we were tapping titanium by hand.
Yeah.
And it's difficult and it's slow and it takes time. So we were rushing to get the new one built and ready up and fired up. And then I got here and I was looking at him, and I brought him. I knew I always bring him with. He's my mascot now. And I looked at him sitting on the shelf and I was like, buddy, you might have to come out of retirement, right?
Suit up, partner.
Like, buddy, put your bowl back on. It's time. And so we did that actually like the night before our first fight. We were finally like, all right, we're bringing out Old Faithful.
Nice.
So I had to dust him off. He had some I think some mice made some home in him while he was sitting in the barn.
Great.
He had some hay in there, so we had to blow him out a little bit. But we hooked up batteries up to him, and he fired right up and was ready to go. Yeah, I was like, attaboy, let's go.
That's so awesome.
You know?
So in Behind the Battle, you and I talked about what possible upgrades could be for the next edition of Rusty, and we talked about big hulking arms to just like really muscular Rusty. So how close were you to doing that?
I got very close to doing that. So I really like a lot of hammers, they do, one right in the middle, a single arm, right? And I understand a lot of the thought behind that and why they do it. It makes sense. I noticed it last season with Old Rusty that having the boxed arms would a lot of times allow me to reach around spinners, right? Because typically spinners are centered, right?
My gosh.
So if you think about the box section, when I'm hammering, right, I can come right around their spinner and hit them without risking my arms.
Yeah.
So I was like, I know that adds a little complexity and stuff like that, and it adds maybe a little more weight, but it does give you that change possibility. I also obviously use the arms to self-right them, so having them boxy and wider serves that purpose. A new Rusty, I decided to go the same route, and I was like, well, I don't want to make them too bulky, but at the same time, I don't want to make them too flimsy or weak.
Of course.
And what I'm really looking for is toughness. So what I ended up doing with the new arms is they're actually spring steel. They're 5160 spring steel. What's nice about that is not only does it help reduce the shock to the system when they hit, but if they do get hit, just like a truck spring or anything else, they'll flex and come back, right? A lot of robots, they don't have as much top armor. And I think as a hammer bot, you need to realize that and exploit it.
Okay. About how far out does the arm reach? Does the hammer
It's
hit?
probably right around where your hand is.
So I can imagine a spinner being kind of about that far. It's enough room to reach over it, which is really impressive.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I thought. There are some bots that are probably compact enough, like maybe Blip or some of these new robots where they are pretty short, and I might have a harder time hitting them because they are really compact.
Sure.
But generally speaking, most robots, the way his arms were designed, is I kind of figured how deep they were, and that if I made the arms just long enough, I would still be able to hit their back section while we were ramming into each other, you know what I'm saying? Which is another thing on the front end. I do have forks on the new Rusty finally, and I built the forks kind of like a fish hook, and the whole idea behind that is he was at the same time kind of a grappler, right? So when I run into that robot and the forks come up underneath and hook their frame, and then the arm comes in, I can clamp him essentially. I can take him into the wall, you know, I can take him into the corner and then just because I firmly believe to be an effective hammer bot, you also need to be a good control bot.
This has been Dave Eaton with Rusty on season 6 of BattleBots, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.
Dude, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.